Cleetus McFarland did not win a NASCAR race, but he just won something NASCAR teams care about almost as much: major brand power. Polaris just signed on. That is not a YouTube partnership. That is a real motorsports brand writing a real check, because Cleetus brings something most NASCAR drivers cannot: millions of loyal fans who were never watching NASCAR before he showed up. Start with what Polaris is, because this matters. Polaris is not a small company looking for cheap exposure. They build off-road vehicles, power sports equipment, and they sell to exactly the kind of customer who watches car content, goes to grassroots racing events, and spends real money on motorsports products. When Polaris writes a check to put their name on a NASCAR deal connected to Cleetus McFarland, they are not doing it on instinct. They are doing it because the numbers told them to. That is the first thing traditional NASCAR fans need to understand about this deal. Polaris did not sign Cleetus because he is charming on camera. They signed him because his audience matches their customer base almost perfectly: off-road fans, car culture people, motorsports enthusiasts who grew up watching burnout videos and backyard racing content before they ever cared about a Cup Series points race. The Freedom Factory is the piece that makes this connection make sense. Cleetus bought a racetrack. That is not a sentence most YouTubers can say. The Freedom Factory is a real venue where real events happen in front of real crowds. It is grassroots motorsports with a massive online audience watching every move. It is part car show, part racetrack, part content studio. And it gives Cleetus something that separates him from every other influencer who has touched NASCAR: a physical home base that proves he is not just chasing clout on a race weekend. When Polaris looks at Cleetus McFarland, they do not see a guy who borrowed a race car for a few laps and posted the video. They see a guy who bought a track, runs his own events, grew a community of millions of people who show up in person and online, and is now expanding that world into a growing NASCAR schedule. That combination is what made the deal possible, and that combination is what makes this story bigger than one sponsorship announcement. Remember the question this story is really asking: is Cleetus McFarland earning his NASCAR rise, or is his audience making him too valuable to ignore? Keep that in mind, because the answer is more complicated than either side wants to admit. Here is a truth that NASCAR teams have known for a long time but rarely say out loud: sponsors do not pay for speed, they pay for eyeballs. A driver who finishes third every week but brings zero media attention is worth less to a sponsor than a driver who finishes 15th but brings 1 million engaged viewers to every race weekend. That sounds harsh. It is also just how the business works. NASCAR runs on sponsorship money, and sponsorship money follows audiences. Cleetus McFarland has an audience that most NASCAR drivers would trade a lot of lap times to have. The people who follow Cleetus are not casual fans who half-watch a race and forget about it Monday morning. They are engaged. They comment, they share, they show up to events, and they buy the products that the people they follow tell them about. That kind of loyalty is extremely difficult to manufacture. Traditional NASCAR marketing has been trying to crack the code on younger, more digital audiences for years. Cleetus already has those people, and they already trust him. That is the bridge the user brief describes, and it is the right word for it. Cleetus is not just a racer who has a YouTube channel. He is a connector between internet car culture and professional motorsports. He brings people who would never have watched a NASCAR race into contact with the sport through content they already enjoy. And when those people see his name on a car with a Polaris logo attached, they do not scroll past it. They watch, they share, they talk about it. For a brand like Polaris, that reach and that loyalty represent something that traditional NASCAR sponsorships sometimes struggle to deliver. The sports core audience already knows the brands. They have seen the same names on cars for years. But Cleetus opens a door to a group of people who are new to the room, and Polaris wants to be the brand standing at that door when they walk in. That is why this deal is bigger than a logo on a car. It is a signal that the way NASCAR sponsorship works is changing, and Cleetus McFarland is the specific reason that change is happening right now. But here is where it gets complicated, because not everyone in NASCAR sees this the same way. And the people who push back have a point worth hearing. The traditional NASCAR fan argument goes something like this: race cars are for racers. You earn your seat by being fast, by learning the craft, by grinding through the lower series and proving you belong at the top level. The Cup Series is supposed to be the best of the best, not the most subscribed of the most subscribed. When an influencer gets his attention and sponsorship dollars because of their online following rather than their finishing positions, it takes something away from the drivers who did it the hard way. That argument is not wrong. It comes from a real place. The Cup Series is full of drivers who spent years and years in ARCA, trucks, and Xfinity before they got a real shot. Drivers who have more raw talent than they will ever get credit for because they do not have a YouTube channel or a viral moment to their name. When a brand like Polaris chooses to connect their name to Cleetus McFarland, some of that money and attention is not going to a more traditional path. That is a fair concern. But here is the other side of that argument. Cleetus McFarland is racing. He is not just posting videos about racing. He bought a track. He runs events. He has a growing NASCAR schedule with Richard Childress Racing, one of the most established organizations in the sport. He is not parachuting into cup races and pretending to be something he is not. He is working through a process, and the Polaris deal is not rewarding him for his subscriber count alone. It is rewarding the full package he brings: the track, the events, the audience, and the actual racing. The debate is real, and it is not going away. But the strongest version of this story is not that Cleetus has already proven he belongs as a top-level NASCAR driver. He has not done that yet. The strongest version is that Cleetus is changing what NASCAR teams and sponsors consider valuable, and that is a shift with consequences that go way beyond one Polaris announcement. If audience reach now factors into sponsorship decisions the way lap times do, that changes the kind of driver NASCAR teams look for. It changes who gets a shot. It changes what a racing resume is supposed to look like. Some people in the sport are going to welcome that. Others are going to fight it. And both groups are going to be watching Cleetus McFarland's NASCAR schedule very closely to see which side ends up being right. This is not just a YouTube story. This is a NASCAR story. And it started the moment Polaris decided Cleetus McFarland's audience was worth writing a check for. Cleetus McFarland did not win a NASCAR race to get the Polaris deal. That is the whole point. He got it because he built something that the sport has been trying to build for years. A real, loyal, growing audience of people who love car culture and are now paying attention to professional racing because of him.